This is how your toms sound when tuned evenly. What I've done here is to nearly tune each drum 4 half steps apart. Basically, that means that there's the same amount, an even amount of pitch difference moving from one drum to the next. We'll go over the exception on that in a minute. First though, let me show you how I tune the drums like these. Keep in mind that these are all even numbered diameters on the tom, so 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Starting with my 8-inch tom, the top head is tuned to 287 Hertz, the bottom head is tuned to 264 Hertz, and the fundamental tone of the drum is 165 Hertz. On the 10-inch tom, the top is 190, bottom is 206, and 122 for the fundamental. The 12-inch is 170 Hertz up top, 174 underneath, and 102 for the fundamental. For my 14-inch floor tom, the top is 129 Hertz, underneath is 139 Hertz, and 80 Hertz is the fundamental. Finally, my 16-inch heads, it's 105 for the batter side, 110 for the reso. The fundamental is a little tricky to read here. You'll see when I first hit the drum, it reads as 65, but based on how much, resonance is going on there, it has a false second reading of either 62 or 63. So making my way up the toms, the actual pitch tuning on these is a slightly flat C, a slightly flat E, a slightly flat G sharp, then a slightly flat B, then a properly tuned E. Now, one cool thing about using this technique with 4 half steps between each tom is that you can basically get octaves from your drums, or in my case, they're close to octaves. My first tom and my fourth tom are just about an octave, as is my second and my fifth. Earlier, I noted that most of my toms are a little flat against my target pitch, and that's actually okay. You don't have to have the drums be perfectly on a pitch, as long as they're all relatively tuned to each other. In fact, you can from here, you can just start to crank up the tuning or bring them down based on what you want for a sound. There are some restrictions here though. You're only gonna be able to bring the tuning down so far before the heads become too loose and you're not able to keep any sort of good tension on it. Also, if the heads are too loose, may make it more difficult to actually play on it and get some good rebound. As you can hear, there is some sympathetic resonance on the snare coming from the 8-inch and the 10-inch toms, but it's not too bad. When I was first trying this approach though, I did try to have all the toms perfectly evenly spaced on the 4 half steps. And when I did that, I was getting way too much buzz on my snare, especially from the 8-inch tom. Now, if you don't have an 8-inch tom on your setup, this is actually going to be a little bit easier for you because you can just have your toms all shifted down from where the snare buzz happens, or maybe crank the snare up a little bit. But if you do have an 8 and 10-inch tom and they're both causing your snare to buzz a lot, there is no amount of finagling you're going to be able to do with your snare to fix that. Instead, you need to have more space for the snare to live. So you need to turn up your 8-inch tom or increase the tension on those heads and lower the tension on the heads on your 10-inch. So basically, you're increasing the amount of pitch between those two drums for your snare to live. Now, some people prefer to have a big pitch difference going from their rack toms to their floor toms, say from their 12-inch to their 14-inch. If that's the case for you, then what I would recommend is to still do 4 half steps apart between each of the rack toms, 4 half steps apart between each of your floor toms. Between your 12 and your 14, there go with some interval that's larger than 4 half steps. You likely noticed that I use this great tool called a tunebot to be able to get my toms tuned exactly how I want. If you want to know more about how a tunebot works and all its really cool features, then check out this video right over here.